Okay, fantastic. Uh, Thanks very much, Nacho, for inviting me to this conference. I'm very sad that I cannot attend in person. It looks fantastic. I would also love to learn so much from the rest of you. But instead, I will try to do this remotely. Please excuse any technological glitches we may have. It was very kind of I'm today going to chat about something. The title obviously is about what software can learn from deforestation. It's just a result of thinking over a long period of time. And I think that these things have some similarity. I should let you know who I am real quick and why I've come to this kind of idea. My name is Chris Wetherell. I studied music and computer science in California, in the United States. I was lucky enough to start a project at Google called Google Reader, which became a feed reader and had some notoriety. I also led the retweeting effort at Twitter after that. And then after that, I've been involved in the early founding of about 4 or 5 startups, depending on how you count it. And during that entire time, I've been a software engineer for, I think, 26 years. It seems like a long time. In any case, what I'm going to be talking about, what I've observed in over 25 years of software development, is a crisis of perspective. I believe it's become vital, even critical, for software companies to develop an understanding of their impact on markets, human progression, even the Earth itself. I'll let the AI presenters talk about whether or not robots will take over our planet. But for this talk, I'll just be focusing lightly on one impact, and that's of markets. Okay, so how does that relate to deforestation? Well, let's talk a little bit about deforestation. So most often, deforestation happens as its primary cause. It's caused by converting cropland, or converting to cropland, land that wasn't primarily used for crops and converted there. And what tends to happen in terms of a negative output is that deforestation contributes to climate change. And the idea is that the folks are trying to look at something that may benefit them, but unfortunately it has this externality. In fact, why are we expanding cropland in the first place? Well, mostly it's to serve local food needs. Very important, crucial, and vital for local communities. Strategically, we're expanding cropland because we're tapping into a global demand for commodities. So it's that a demand is external to a local system, and that local system can exploit what happens outside of their system. Okay, great. And this is sort of the chain of events that leads to a lot of negative externalities for the planet. Okay, so how does that relate to software products? Well, let's look at how software products. Most often, when we're talking about software products that fail, that product failure is due to a lack of profitability. For one reason or another, they couldn't make more money than they were spending. And though, generally speaking, in that case, that lack of profitability will contribute to an entire market failure. We see this often, and by market failure, I mean a really specific, strict economic definition where the distribution of goods and services are wildly inefficient. Therefore, the market is not healthy. So why would any company do this? Why would they delay profitability? Well, mostly it's because they want to grow. They want to spur user growth by offering something at a very low cost, usually for free, often via ad-supported models. And the reason they're doing this strategically is because they need to attract capital, and this helps them suppress competition. And we've seen this a lot of times, and I'll go into that a little bit later. So here's the common ground between deforestation and a lot of software product development. Their strongest focus is on a value within one market, their own market. It makes sense. If you're a local farm grower, you need to focus mostly on your needs. And if you're a single product company, you need to focus on whether your product can survive. That means you have a weak focus on something that's really important, which is market health overall. You simply cannot spend the time thinking about whether or not you are harming something outside of your local scenario. And we're not even discussing interrelated market values, just market health overall. Most companies are not focused on this. So this is what we could learn from deforestation, that this is sort of the crisis that we are facing in software product development, because both share the belief that the responsibility to consider sustainability is locally scoped only. It is my assertion that that can't possibly be true, but this is the belief when you talk to software CEOs, when you talk to people who have grand influence on how software is developed, is that I have to only care about whether my company survives. Okay. Fine, let's consider these companies. I'm just going to pick 4 companies, and we can just talk about them very quickly. So, okay, let's talk about, there's an American company called Zillow, a software company involved in real estate. And Zillow was started in 2006. So it's been around a long time. And it's currently ad supported and also currently not profitable. So after its expenses, the company, I think, lost $158 million last year. And by Zillow's estimates, that 67% of people who purchased a home are using their site, which is a remarkable statistic. This is a company that's very, very, very big. There used to be more entrants in the space, but Zillow was able to suppress that competition, as well as there's only about 2 or 3 of these companies left in the United States. In part because their offering was low cost or free to most of its users. In order to grow, they were able to not focus on profitability, and they weren't worried about whether or not their product was simply the best in the market, or whether the market even could generate a profit at all. And so we have a case where this situation of non-profitability may continue inevitably. It may continue for an entire generation. By my definition, that is not a healthy market. And despite the fact that one company can make it, it does not, I think, foster human progression to have that be the case. Let's take another company, because we don't want to just pick on poor old Zillow. Here's one near and dear to my heart, Spotify. I've been an amateur musician for 30 years, and don't worry, it's no music you've ever heard of. But Spotify started in 2008, and they're the world's leading music streaming service. And they rarely turn a profit. I think they only did so recently. To do so, they had to cut 17% of their workforce. One of the problems with Spotify is that it turns out when other people try to create competition, Spotify has most of the large record label deals and agreements. So it's really hard for anybody to even enter this space. If somebody could do this in a way that would be more profitable for musicians, I do not think we will be able to see them. Spotify's model doesn't seem like it will continue toward profitability without expanding past music, suggesting that the entire music industry cannot create a streaming service that is profitable. This seems at heart the definition of a failed or unhealthy market. Next, let's consider another one, Pinterest. I don't know if you're familiar with Pinterest, but Pinterest is a very large, for lack of a better word, bookmarking and pinning service. They started in 2010, very old. They have over 500 million users. They're currently ad supported, and they are also currently not profitable. They do post double-digit revenue growth, though. So they're growing at a rapid pace at times. They are just not seeing a way to support their basic offering. And so as a result, if, again, somebody else wanted to come in and do this, and there have been many other potential competitors to this, they would have to start out at an even lower price point, an even less profitable position. And again, this seems like we've now looked at 3 markets that seem, by a strict definition, very unhealthy. The last one is one you are very probably familiar with. Let's talk about Uber for a second. So Uber's problems and conditions are pretty well known, well understood by a lot of people. Uber started in 2009, and only after 15 years did it post its first ever annual profit. And to do so, they had to flout municipal, state, and federal regulations in a lot of countries. They had to cut, I think it's at least 14% of their workforce recently. And they've had to create unsafe conditions, both for their workers and for some of their riders, in order to grow. This, they've had a strong secondary competitor in most markets, but just about that. Whether or not ride sharing is profitable is something we may never address because Uber had to create Uber Eats, various other things. Basically, the market that could have been, I'm not sure we will understand in its basic form. We never have been offered that opportunity. Uber has grown. Uber is significantly impactful on the world, and it may not be able to persist in profitability. Okay, so that's 4 companies. And I think probably you can imagine there are many more. I could probably do this talk all day and list hundreds of companies in this position, particularly software companies that will exist probably for an entire generation. So given that, and that seems like a problem for us to solve, can we actually build better markets for software? And it's my contention, probably. I think so. We should at least try. So I have 3 small suggestions for the ways that we could approach building better markets. Okay. The first thing is a fundamental change to how capital works in our software development system. Venture capitalists who give us the money so that we can create startups could, instead of just requiring projection of our sales or projection of our user growth, require projection of what happens to other companies if our company is successful. They might want to start making that a metric for how risky the business is that they are going to support. If your company lasts for 20 years and still can't turn a profit, is that what you want your venture capital to do? And I think this is one of the solid questions that capital needs to ask itself. You should ask what happens to a health overall whenever you are wielding your power. It seems like we could at least attempt this. So it's not just the capital can change. I think startups themselves have a responsibility to change. Software makers could update their view of having a model which is free or low price or zero price and view that as risky, as a potential detriment to what they're building. For the last 10 years, I've been inundated with conversations with software makers where they started with the premise that we do not have to worry about being profitable. We will go for the next 10 years. And all we have to focus on is building a product that essentially is free, and we'll worry about the rest later. But I think that we now have 20 or so years of watching what happens to those products that attempt that strategy. The vast majority fail, and being able to point to somebody like Amazon is not validation of that strategy. That is validation of the survivor bias fallacy. So I think the software makers should really start to think of profitability very, very, very early. And this would help, I think, in making healthier markets. And last, and this is a sort of a little harder to achieve, but still worth trying, is that governments should change. Right now, there are a number of industrialized societies that focus on market health by focusing on monopolies and monopoly power of software products, or sorry, not products in general, sorry. While that's good and that is helpful, it is time to advance that idea. And this is one thing, an idea we could learn directly from environmental health. Governments should identify companies that are invasive to markets and not simply monopolies. It is not necessary for a company to be a monopoly to affect the entire health of a market. I really like this idea that we look at them as invasive species. A company can enter a market, permanently changing that market, not always for the better. And so understanding when companies can become invasive and then perhaps regulating when they can enter a market is probably a significant change that could help, particularly in software. Software can enter markets much faster than other kinds of companies because of the internet, because of the pervasiveness of devices like phones. And so as a result, software companies have the opportunity to become more invasive than nearly any other product that has ever been created, possibly in human history. So these are my thoughts on what we could do to make better markets, and why deforestation is a pretty good analogy for that. So I can kind of wrap it up in a conclusion, I think, which is that I think it's much easier than ever for software to ruin a market because it only thinks about itself, because it only has local focus. And the thing I would like us all to take away is that for software products, ignoring the existence of externalities is risky for their business, which is why they should think about it right away. And that's all I have to say about it. Thanks for the time. I very much appreciate this. I hope my English wasn't terrible for most of you. I wish I knew Spanish. I will endeavor to learn it someday. Anyway, thank you.
Hi, Chris. I really liked your talk, and I'm very well. I like the idea of regulating the markets on technology, because I don't think that that's something that we have right now. And I know the case, I think it was from Susanna Thubaut, that the age of capitalism, I don't remember the name of her, but well, anyway, she explains there the case of Facebook and how we can treat and consider that like a monopoly and why we should also regulate that market. And I really liked your metaphor of the invasive species. And the thing is that an invasive species, there is a momentum why there's a time when a species is invasive. So I wonder if you have any thoughts on what kind of size the company needs to be in order to be regulated, because I don't think that we can do that for every startup that has like a business model presented to VC, for example. And it's something to be considered when there is like a big amount of user base already using that product. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Thank you.
To be a few examples that they come in categories. The first category of sort of successful health market understanding is open source software itself. A lot of open source software is done for free or for very low cost, and done for sort of egalitarian reasons. And a lot of that enters markets and tends to bolster the development of new products and ideas. The World Wide Web is possibly the best example of this, because where it entered markets, it created more opportunities. So that's one category, which tends to be this like freely developed volunteer model. But you can see the problem with that is that as a volunteer model, it's not about profit seeking and can't really build up profitability off of that, which it avoids the problem already. The other way about understanding some successful, you can view it either successful invasive companies or successful non-invasive companies. Examples of successful non-invasive companies abound everywhere. They usually are companies scoped to a region or nation. They tend to support, they tend to have a unit cost. In fact, that seems to be one of the markers for success in market health, is that a unit cost is present, so that you understand that something is being bought and sold. It's easy to identify the product, and it's easy to identify how the market conditions work. There's almost sort of a numerous number of examples to say, but like that I would say that looking at unit cost and its transparency tends to result in better market health. That's from my software perspective. I can't speak as to other products, but software that seems to work out better. There have been one of the ways you can see this is when you look at sort of app store markets or mobile development. You can often see that those things that are priced and do well tend to be something that are market healthy. An interesting one, if you want to look at some of those, are video games. A lot of video games come with a unit cost. We can understand often how they are functioning within markets. And as a result, we can kind of understand, they tend to be able to plan for their sustainability and how they affect other video games very well. As a result, the video game industry seems to be flourishing in a way that other markets aren't.